I've seen those posts because like last year I was like just going through and seeing what's out there in the market. It's funny. They want someone that can do the 3D, the After Effects, the visual effects, the Premiere. Like, man, you're looking for a unicorn.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Game Day Glare. I'm Lance, and I'm with my boy E. And today we have a special guest, and I'll let E introduce our special guest.
Yes, today we're with CM de la Vega, which I'm not too sure how many years we've first met, but it's definitely a few. He's an After Effects specialist, worked in the NFL, worked on documentaries, sports documentaries, 30 for 30, the whole 9 yards. So first of all, CM, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you guys for having me here on your podcast, and it's an honor to be here.
Well, it is an honor for us as well. It's especially excited that we've got like a After Effects, visual effects guru with us, because Lance and I are not necessarily the best at that type of content. So we definitely need help from people from people like you, and we're very excited to have you talk about that aspect of sports videography and tell us about your journey, what you're doing now, and how can younger people, up and coming people can follow your footsteps and hopefully get to where you are. Let's start from the beginning. Can you tell us first of all how you started, how you got towards like sports videography more specifically, and how you got to the NFL? I know you're not there anymore, but how do you get there?
Yeah. No, it's been, in all honesty, it's been a journey. And I think every career is a journey with a lot of different stops on the way. And mine is like many others, right? But just reflecting, like, my childhood, my passions was always art, was always technology, and sports. So those were my three passions. And I think now, doing the stuff that I did for the NFL and the work that I do with ESPN, with the motion graphics, the VFX, is really that intersection of sports, art, and technology. And just back when I was growing up, I loved to draw. And, now that I'm back home in South Florida and, I'm closer to my parents and I'm looking at my old sketchbooks, I'm realizing, wow, I was just sketching logos of the Miami Hurricanes, of the Miami Dolphins, and cartoon characters. But when my dad bought a computer back in the mid 90s, it was a Pentium 100 megahertz. If you guys are if you grew up in the 90s, you'll understand this. It was like state of the art, a 100 megahertz Pentium PC with Microsoft Paint. Like, dude, I fell in love with that. Like, I was drawing those same logos, but instead of paper, on Microsoft Paint. So that was like the intersection of like art and technology. So I was always in that pursuit. How can I combine art and technology? Obviously now that's where I am now, but it took me a very long time to get there. I actually went to the University of Miami, graduated in computer engineering. But it was, again, I was in search for that intersection of art and technology. But obviously engineering there's no art. I mean, there is an art form to designing the chips and everything, but like the art form that we implement, with videography, cinematography, with editing, that is, that art form is what I'm referring to. But I think there was one elective class that I took there that was computer animation, right? It was an elective engineering class, and I took that. And I think that animation was using Maya, a 3D modeling and animation with Maya. I think that planted a seed in me. And then after I graduated, I knew that I wasn't really passionate about engineering. I knew I really wanted to do something that I was more passionate. So I was always in search for that career. And a couple years after I graduated, I saw this movie by Robert Rodriguez, the director Robert Rodriguez. It was El Mariachi. Obviously, it had been out for many years now, but I saw that movie and I saw his follow-up to that movie, Desperado, and it blew me away. And then when I saw his little 10-minute film school, how he was able to do it on a low budget and how he was empowering the aspiring filmmaker that you can do it too. Like he said, if I did it, you can do it too with whatever you have around you. If you have, in his case, he had a turtle, he had a guitar case, and he had a town. Let's build a story around that. So that basically kind of shifted my trajectory in that direction towards the arts, right? From there, I started, my goal was to become a filmmaker, a director, filmmaker. I didn't know what, I didn't know specifically what, but that was my goal. So I set out to do my own short films, I went back to my home country of Nicaragua, teamed up with my cousin. We did what I call like the best homemade action movie, because it was raw. I mean, when I mean raw, that it wasn't the most perfect movie. It had a lot of imperfection, but we were learning. We were teaching ourselves as we did this action film. We were teaching ourselves filmmaking, the writing, the editing, the cinematography, the visual effects. So I was teaching myself, even though it was rudimentary, using rudimentary software. I was just using Vegas Pro at that time. Any VFX or graphics, I was doing it all in Vegas Pro. At this time, not even After Effects. But that led me to creating short films, doing some music videos for independent artists around Miami. And, in every single project, I was always challenging myself to incorporate graphics and to incorporate VFX. And then, doing this for about 5-6 years, I decided to take that step to move to LA, because I knew that was a mecca of the film and TV industry. And I knew I wanted to pursue a career. Like I said, my goal was to become, a film director, work in the film and TV industry. So I moved out there, and I didn't, we can go into a whole podcast on my adventures in LA, because that's a crazy story. And y'all know LA is such a big city, but it took me a while to land my first job in the industry. And once I did, it took me about 5-6 months. And once I got in, it was working for a production company that specialized in reality shows for cable network. So some of the shows that we were working ran on BET, CMT, Discovery, the History Channel, and it's all After Effects. So that was my first job where I had to learn. I literally learned After Effects on the job. I was able to convince the post-production supervisor. At that time, I had a demo reel of all like the videos that I had done and all the graphics and VFX that I had done in Vegas, right? And I showed the post-production supervisor my reel, and he was kind of impressed. He's like, okay, like, let me give you a shot. I'm all about willing to give people an opportunity. So he gave me that opportunity because they needed a motion graphic artist to join the team. So he gave me that shot. I through the help of my other coworker who was a veteran in After Effects, he kind of got me up to speed. And then watching Video Copilot tutorials at nighttime, trying to, download all that information from Andrew Kramer's tutorials, right? Back in the, late, early, from 2000. So I got my job in 2008. So 2008, 9, 2010 is just watching a whole bunch of, Video Copilot tutorials and trying to learn After Effects. But that was my start. And my first couple of years in the industry was just really just working for this production company and other side jobs that I could get, right? Nothing in sports at the moment. But the first opportunity came when I helped out a friend for AOL. So AOL had a division called AOL Latino that was producing content for the Hispanic market here in the United States. So my friend had a job where they were interviewing a band, right? It's a Latino band in LA. And he hired me because they wanted it in Spanish. So since I'm very fluent in Spanish, I went ahead. But what that led to, for me to know the producers at AOL Latino, and then about a year later, they approached me, they emailed me saying, hey, we have a sports video that we want to do in Spanish. And that is a Manny Pacquiao versus Antonio Margarito video. It's a fight. So Manny Pacquiao, one of the greatest boxers. He was fighting. I mean, that fight was like that fight was a no-brainer. Everyone knew Pacquiao was gonna win, but he was fighting Antonio Margarito. He was from Mexico, so AOL Latino, a big market of their viewerships are fans who are into boxing. So that basically led the doors to getting into the world of sports. At that time, it was just videography and editing. So we went out. I brought one of my really close friend to help me shoot it, and we teamed up. So we shot the video, we did a great job, we edited it, and that led to more opportunities in that boxing world. We got to go to the media days for several Manny Pacquiao's fights. what's the other boxer? Canelo Alvarez, when he was up and coming, around 19 years of age. We did that. Floyd Mayweather, Money Mayweather. We also went up to Vegas. So that led to the opportunities. And also around that time, one of my friends was working for Fox Sports, and he got a job for Fox Sports West. So doing the regional teams of the Anaheim Ducks, the Clippers, and the Angels. And so he wanted to add graphics to his pieces. He was an editor. He was a producer editor. So he wanted to add graphics. So he'd come over in the evenings to my apartment and is like, hey man, can you do this like graphic that I can use for my video? So, I had nothing to do. Yeah, sure. Let me just go ahead and knock it out for you. And
good friend.
He would put, yeah, we've helped each other out a lot. So it's like once you form that community, you just help each other out a lot. But so the funny thing is, like, he would put my graphics in his edits, and then his producer's like, man, that's really cool. Like, who did it? You did it? And like my friend's like, nah, I got my buddy CM that did it. So that led to an opportunity when they needed some editors, they brought me in, right? So I did some stuff for Fox Sports West, and then one of my coworkers at that first job that I got called me up and said, hey, CM, I'm working on an ESPN documentary. He's an archive producer. And he says, I'm working on an ESPN 30 for 30 doc. We need a motion graphic artist. Are you interested and available? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm interested and I'm available. And even if I'm not available, I'll make myself available. That's the thing. When those opportunities come, you drop everything to do it, because like an ESPN 30 for 30, heck yeah. Right. So that was a great opportunity. That was around 2012 that happened. And so what I'm trying to say is every single part of the journey kind of led to something else, something else. And you're going up on that rung of the ladder, one step, up higher and higher, little by little. And through the opportunities with AO Latino, with the boxing videos that I did, the Fox Sports, the ESPN, I had a decent demo reel that I could put together, right? I had enough material where I can put together some of my work working for these, different companies and different opportunities. And around 2015, so in LA, a lot of the people in LA are freelancers, right? There's no such thing as like a full-time job. It's all project based. So there's there's seasons where you're booked, like you're working nonstop. And then there's seasons where it's like I got nothing to do but go to the beach, Santa Monica, whatever, or just hang out. But so I was in that season where there was not a lot of work. I helped out one of my brothers. I helped him out on a video. And that year I proposed to who's now my wife. So I proposed, I'm like, man, I got a wedding coming up in a year. We need to save up for that wedding, and we're going to pay for the wedding ourselves. So I need cash now. So and because when you're single, you can figure out, like, you can live on like almost nothing, for example, my
freelance
first year
is not that scary when you're single with no kids.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
When you have a family, it is though. It is when you have a family.
Yeah, well, now I see the difference now. Now that I have, my wife and I have a daughter, it's like it's a completely different ball game. Yeah. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's the stress level just goes up with that. But when you're single, it's different. Like my first year, I was like going to Starbucks, just getting literally Monday through Friday. Like, let me order like a $2 soup from Subway, and let me ask for extra crackers, and that would be my lunch. I mean, literally, that would be like the only, other than breakfast, that would be the only thing that I ate. And then on weekends, like, all right, let's feast. Let's get a foot-long sub now, on weekends. But, when you're single, you know how to make that dollar stretch, right? As long as, you pay the bills, the rent, you can make it stretch. But yeah, 2015, I needed a job. I had a wedding that we needed to pay off, we needed to pay in the upcoming year. I applied, let's apply. And honest with you, this is one of the few times that I applied through, the websites like Indeed. In this case, it was Indeed. I saw the posting for the NFL. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me apply for the NFL. Let's see what happens. I didn't have any expectations at all. And then a couple of weeks later, hey, CM, we're interested if you're interested in an interview, here are the dates. Okay, cool. Let me go to the interview. And then they're like, by the way, like, we're going to quiz you on NFL history. I'm like, what? They're going to give me a quiz before I go for the actual interview? Like, all right. And I mean, I grew up watching the Miami Dolphins, right, in the 90s, Dan Marino, but my time in LA, I was so focused on other things, I wasn't up to date with NFL. So I quickly try to jam pack as much information as I can. Like, I know Tom Brady's still playing. I know they're still winning Super Bowls, right? But yeah, it was just a crash course, and I went in, took the test. The only ones that I probably got right were like the questions on like who was the only perfect team in NFL history, which obviously the Miami Dolphins. And they asked who was the coach, Don Shula, because that's my favorite team. So those were like the only answers I probably got right. So I'm like, oh man, they're not going to hire me, I went in the interview, didn't feel like I did a good job in the interview. So like, oh, whatever, at least I tried. And then a couple of weeks later, I got the email saying, hey, you got the job. I'm like, wow, like, that's amazing. And then later on working, during my time at the NFL, I realized that demo reel that I put together made a huge difference in them giving me that opportunity. It was a very creative demo reel that stood out among the crowd, right? And really, it was... they were looking for that editor that was really strong in editorial skills and really strong in motion graphics, because it was for Thursday Night Football for the kickoff show, which is a pregame show. So our team was creating all the hype videos that would run during the pregame show. And they Thursday Night Football was kind of like a standalone kind of team for the NFL. Like they kind of did things their own way, and they wanted to add, graphics, a lot of graphics or VFX to their hype videos. But the thing is, like, you do have a graphics department at the NFL, but they are more responsible for the graphics package as a whole for all of their shows, like for Total Access, Good Morning Football. So any changes, like, they're the ones that are responsible for that. But for Thursday Night Football, they wanted more of what's called like specialty graphics, which is like a producer has an idea on Monday, and for this upcoming week, let's say for Thursday, and we want to execute that graphics, that idea, like literally in 2 days or in a day. And graphics department is like, no, we need like 3 weeks. We needed to go through the whole creative. We need to get approved. And they're like, no, we need someone that can come in, take that idea that we have, spin it, and by the next day, here it is. Like, like a little gift. Yeah. So that
like
was
a mercenary that comes in, like these army movies when there's the guy who comes in and does everything with no rules and no supervision. That's you.
Exactly. That was me. In the world of Rambo, like that was probably me, that kind of thing, but it was that first year. So that was the start, really. That was my start, really combining, like I said, that intersection of my three passions: sports, art, and technology. Art because it's an art form. Sports, we're definitely football sports, and then technology because we're using technology. We're using computers. We're using After Effects and what other plugins we use to create our art. So that really was the true beginning of that intersection of those three passions. And then, the first year was extremely difficult. I thought after a month they were going to fire me because I knew that they hired me for the graphics, right? And the thing with the NFL that there's a structure to how they want their videos edited editorially, right? And it's not like written out. It's like kind of like unwritten. And it took me a while to kind of figure out that rhythm of how they wanted their videos edited, right? And I took basically most of my week was just like, I was getting tons of editorial notes. So before I could even get into the graphics, into After Effects, like I was fixing my edits, right? All editorial. So by the time I got everything approved, I had like maybe a day or less than a day to work on graphics, which, as if you do know, graphics may take even double the time as an edit because it's so time consuming. It's, it's very creative. You have to experiment. So my first month, I'm like, man, they're going to fire me. They're going to fire me. It was like, I was so stressed out, but luckily, I was able to hang in there. And by the end of the season, I realized like they really enjoyed the work that I did. And, that was the beginning, and every year after that just kept building and building and building, trying to, all the graphics, all the VFX, like, okay, I did this last year. Let's see how we can raise the bar, the next year. And that's what I did every single year. So if I put a compilation together of all the videos that I did at the NFL, you'll see that every year is distinct from the previous year, because I'm experimenting with different ideas. I'm experimenting with different styles. And every year kind of had like a common theme, to it, at least to the graphics.
Oh, that's the key.
So basically you figured out how to edit those editorials faster so you had more time for your graphics, right?
No, what happened was I figured out the key. Unfortunately, the key was like staying longer, after work. So there was two keys. Number one is I figured out how I had to pace myself, right? I knew that by the end, so our task was Monday, we would get our assignments Monday morning. The show ran on, obviously, Thursday Night Football is on Thursday, right? But we had to get our work done. Our first couple of years, we had until 3 p.m. Thursday afternoon, 3 p.m., LA time, Pacific time. Towards the end of my run with the NFL, it got cut down to like noontime, right? But those first couple of years, it was until 3. So I knew that every day, like I need to be by, I had milestones. Like by the end of Monday night, I had to be at this point. By Tuesday, I had to be at this point in my edit, right? So I kind of figure out, number one, the pacing, how to pace myself. And number two, I realized in order to do the graphics, I had to spend extra time on my end. Some of it, I did get paid overtime. Some of it was like, it's just, I really want to put my best foot forward. I really want to go that extra mile. I may not always get compensated. Hopefully in the end, everything kind of balances out, or it pays dividends in the future. So I put in that extra time, which I knew that I really needed for the graphics. And I think the combination of the two really helped me find like a winning formula, but it's not easy. You're editing and you're doing graphics, and you need to, sometimes I had 2 assignments, two videos to do per in those 3.5 days. And it's no joke. It's a lot of work.
Well, especially with graphics, I don't know if it's still the case now with all these M2, M3 Apple computers, but like I remember back a few years back, like you have to take like render time into the whole your whole schedule as well, because sometimes your render time can be half a day or a full day or something like that. And I remember sometimes we'd have like 2 or 3 computers, like you would export the first 5 minutes on one computer and then the second 5 minutes on another, because we don't have time to wait and things like that. So that's also something that
no, most definitely. And in the first couple of years, we were on slower Mac computers. And oh my goodness, like some of those renders were like, my producer's like, how long is it going to take to render? I'm like, it's a couple of hours. Like, man, we're cutting. Like I came close. Like if my piece was airing, let's say at 4 p.m., there's a couple of times that my render literally finished minutes before the airtime. So like, okay, it's rendered. Let's push it to play out so the guys in the truck can like queue it up and play it, So we came that first year, we came close a lot of times. And because of those renders. But, after a couple of years, they moved us up. And I made it clear, like, hey, guys, if you want me to continue working with After Effects and doing graphics, like, you guys got to give me, like, your, faster computers. And which thankfully they did, where the renders were, instead of, like, 3 hours, 2 hours, it cut down to, like, okay, it's going to be, like, 45 minutes, 30 minutes. But like once you're in, what's going to take the longer run. If you're adding lights to After Effects and you're casting shadows, like, hey, that casting of the shadows is going to add an extra 30 minutes. So at the end of the day, if you're cutting it close, like, let me disable it and let's do it without shadows. So you kind of knew what caused that extra hour of render time.
So how did you go from the NFL to starting a YouTube channel? What kind of inspired you to leave that crazy, chaotic field to come to YouTube, which you can control now?
Yeah, well, actually, it was at the same, kind of almost simultaneously, almost at the same time that I was working at the NFL and started the YouTube channel, which created to the chaos, to the craziness of the whole thing. Because imagine working on Thursday, the busy schedule of Thursday Night Football, and then trying to come home on the weekends, and trying to come up with a tutorial. But so the whole YouTube channel and the After Effects tutorial came about very organically. It wasn't my intention to ever create a YouTube channel with tutorials. It actually all started to help out a friend I had helped them with the motion graphics for an independent documentary. And they were doing some extra crowdfunding, and they approached me like, hey, we want a video from you telling the people your experience working on our doc. And I'm like, well, that's a good idea, but I think I don't know if people are interested in what I do as a motion graphic artist, but maybe I thought maybe I can turn it into a tutorial and I can show the people how I did the graphics for that documentary. So I remember that actually ended up being my first tutorial, and which is funny. I laugh now because I probably did like at least 50 takes on that 10-minute tutorial. But I did that video and I gave it to my friend, so they can post it, on the webpage for their crowdfunding. And to be honest with you, I don't think they used it. I don't think they ever used that video. So it sat on my hard drive for about a year. So after a year, I'm looking through my drive and like, hey, I did that video. I know I spent a lot of work and effort on it. Let me just post it to YouTube. Let me just post it. What the heck? Let's just do it. And then I post it. And then little by little over time, I get comments like people are like, hey, thank you so much for the tutorial. This was great. Look what I did. And they will put their links. And I'm looking at it and like, oh my goodness, they were able to follow step by step. That's amazing. I was blown away that they were able to understand the logic, behind the steps. Like, who's going to understand this? I don't know. But that really encouraged me to keep going. So that was around 2013, 2014, and which was about now 10 years ago. But I didn't follow up immediately. I followed up a year later with another tutorial on, I think it was on green screen VFX, and then another year. So I was doing I was averaging pretty much one tutorial per year, which any YouTuber knows.
Was it already specific about sports, or did it start more generic?
No, it was more generic. It was, even though the first one was sports, I put one of the Dodger players at that time, but it was a very generic, not generic, but it was I did use as an example I used as an example one of the players for the LA Dodgers, but it was more like an effect that can be applied for anything. But I think it was my time during the NFL. So after my first year at the NFL, I decided, hey, let me take this YouTube. I've done about 3 or 4 tutorials at that time, and I was getting some really positive feedback. I mean, nothing crazy. It wasn't going viral or anything, but the few, it was steadily, growing in views and in comments, and the comments were very encouraging. And I decided, hey, after my first year at the NFL, let me try to, be a little more consistent. Let me see if I can do 1 or 2 per month. So that was my goal. And then since I was working at the NFL for the next 6 years, I thought it was just very natural for me to incorporate some of the lessons that I learned that I was using at the NFL on those tutorials. So that's how the sports kind of tutorials, kind of develop on the YouTube channel. Just because I was working at the NFL and working on a lot of different sports related videos for client work. So I was like, hey, let me take whatever technique I use and show the community how I did that.
And do you think it had like an impact on your career, like the other way around as well, where like doing YouTube sort of helped you with your job at the NFL?
Yes, most definitely. It did help me in the NFL, and it did help me overall, because as I was doing the tutorials, I was always researching. I was always trying to figure out the best technique. So it really taught me. It really taught me how to be a better After Effects artist, because I really had to learn. I knew how to use After Effects, right? I had watched a whole bunch of tutorials, but there was several connections that I didn't quite understand at that moment. But once I started doing the tutorials, it really forced me to understand how everything works, like in synergy, or how everything connects. And it really forced me to understand it. And what that did was that it just helped me become a better motion graphic artist and VFX artist. And I was able to translate that into my work. So it definitely helped me become a better at my craft by doing those tutorials. Because as an instructor, you have to, if you don't know it, if you don't know the technique, you have to teach yourself that technique. You have to figure out why it works, right? And then obviously teaching it, you have to make sure that when you teach it, there's a logical flow of the process of the steps that you're teaching. So I think all that just really contributed for me to help me get better at my craft.
So since you're like a rare blend of editor and motion artist, could you like walk us through like how would you set up a project?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it depends. I think it depends per project, obviously. But towards the later half of like the last couple of years of the years that I was at the NFL, I laugh now because I was trying to cheat. Because let's say if I had a 30-second hype video that I had to do, my last year, especially my last year at the NFL, I was like, you know what? I don't want to edit 30 seconds. I want to edit 15 seconds only. And the other 15 seconds were going to be filled up with full screen motion graphics. So I know I'll have a graphic at the beginning for 4 seconds, at the end for 4 seconds, and then in between I'll put in, maybe another graphics with like 2 or 3 seconds. So my last year I was cheating it. I was like adding more graphics so I wouldn't have to cut as much, because the thing is like finding those footage it's time consuming, right? You're trying to find the footage, you're trying to, go through all the melts. That takes time. And I wanted it, especially in my last couple of years, I just really wanted to focus more on the graphics or on the VFX. So I decided, you know what, let me spend less time going through the melts and looking for the footage and trying to find the best shots, and I'll spend more time. So that was like my hack, but it's all really project based, like definitely sometimes I had to map it out. If there's a certain, if we knew we were going to put the video in an environment and the camera was going to travel to different places, and each spot it would highlight, let's say a player, it would go, let's say to like, for example, we're working on the Patriots. Let's say the first one is Tom Brady. And then we see some shots of Tom Brady. And then it would go to Gronk, maybe the next 3 seconds. And then maybe it would go to Edelman. So I would have to map that out, at least on paper. So when I'm editing, I know that like this section is going to be my move in After Effects. And this section is going to be where we're going to see, the clips, the highlights of Tom Brady. And then we have like a second move or half a second, the move of the camera in After Effects. So all that mapping out, definitely I had to do, at least if not on paper, at least in Premiere, with markers. I would mark it out. That way I had like a roadmap of when I would put in where I would exactly put in the graphics, and also those transition moves, which at times I realized I had to go back, like, oh my goodness, this is too fast or too slow. So I had to modify it a little bit, but that's part of the process.
Well, also people don't understand too, when you're working for broadcast, like your 15 seconds or your 30-second spot has to be precise. When you work for YouTube or you're putting hype reels on the internet, you can have it 31 seconds, 35 seconds, doesn't matter. But when it's broadcast, it has to be precise. So that's kind of tricky too, right? You have all these elements you want to add in, but when you have a 30-second spot, you fill up that 30-second spot pretty fast.
Exactly. And it's challenging because sometimes, like, my goodness, like I need more time, and you have to really tell that story, because a hype video tells a story. We're telling a story in those 30 seconds, and the best hype videos tells a story, right? So you're telling a story through, through editorially, and in my case, also adding the graphics. But telling those stories in 30 seconds was also, definitely, it was a challenge many times, because you're trying to fit so many ideas, and sometimes like, hey, I have to cut it out, or I have to, consolidate, in some way. I have to, balance it out in some way.
And software wise, like you're obviously using After Effects, but what else are you using on your sort of day-to-day type of work?
Yeah, day-to-day now, obviously Premiere for editing, After Effects. I use a lot of plugins for After Effects. I've been using a lot of Deep Glow is one of my favorite plugins that I've been using for After Effects. Shadow Studio, Deep Glow, just really great plugins. And I'm also, the last couple of years, I've been diving into Unreal Engine. So I'm trying to see I'm learning Unreal Engine. I've used it on a couple commercial projects in the past year, and just trying to learn Unreal and some AI tools. I've been experimenting with AI tools more so to either generate, backgrounds that I might need for my graphics, or some different elements that I might need. AI, I'm not using AI to completely make my motion graphic, but I use it as a tool to generate, instead of trying to find a specific stock image that I need, and if I can't find that look that I want, like, hey, let me see if AI can generate more of that style that I wanted. So that's how I've been using AI. Midjourney, I've been, using Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. And what else? Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been using now, like lately in my day-to-day.
What kind of tips would you give somebody who's getting into video editing, motion design, to kind of, get started and then to stay up with industry trends?
That's a good question. That's a really great question. I think what I tell people is to learn the fundamentals before you want to get into sports or VFX, just learn the fundamentals, because that's I realized that just learning the fundamentals of graphics, of animation, of design, of VFX, was really helpful in my career. So really understanding the fundamentals, and then once you have that understanding of the fundamentals, then you can apply it to sports. And I think that will make them a better artist if they really just learn the fundamentals first, and then afterwards they can apply. Obviously, it's a lot of patience. Any journey will have its ups and downs. Like I have my ups and downs. Even I've been doing this for 16 years now. I'm blessed that I've been doing it for a while, but I still have my ups and downs. This journey is a journey of ups, valleys and peaks. So knowing how to stay balanced, and I know it could be a very stressful job at times. So just, self-care, mental health, self-care, just really, I've more so now, because I've realized so many times I was just burnt out. I worked myself to death, and knowing when to take those breaks. I mean, it's easy to say that, like, that's not going to happen to me. But so many times now, as I reflect on my career, it's so important to taking break. Like, hey, I need to take a break. I need to take some, even if it's like 3 days off or, week off. It's so important, because you come back re-energized, and you come back more creative, instead of like, let me push through. There are times that's good to push through, but if you do it too consistently, you're going to have that burnout. And that's happened to me many, many times. And so that's my advice. Just fundamentals, master the fundamentals. Just take some breaks, self-care, mental health, make sure that you're doing good, because it's a grind.
I was going to ask, because, like a lot of times when sports team, like they put an ad out there for a job, often it's like, you need to know Premiere, you need to know After Effects, you need to know Photoshop, you need to know all these things, right? But at the end of the day, I think they'll be happy to settle for someone who's like great at one of those three and can sort of, dabble in the other two, for example, like great at Premiere, okay in After Effects, or the other way around. But do you think, as someone, actually, I've got two questions, like as someone who's good at both, like, do you think like that now, if you were to be like a video, if you want to become a video editor in the NFL or the NBA or whatever, do you think that you have to know After Effects? Is it now sort of a minimum requirement, even if you just started as a video editor, you don't necessarily see yourself a motion graphic person? Is there like a minimum of motion design and After Effects that you need to be able to do? And my second question is, if you're a visual effects guy, do you need to know 3D? Is that like now like a must-have in your bag, sort of thing?
Those are great questions. And so the first question is, it definitely, being good at both editing and motion graphics definitely opened the doors for me, especially at the NFL, right? When I started out just doing motion graphics, but I loved editing. I spent so much time editing my short films when I was trying to teach myself filmmaking. Like I mentioned, I didn't go to film school or design school at all. So I really fell in love with editing. So editing was like my first passion, because I loved editing. But when I got my start, it was in motion graphics, and I was like, hey, this is really cool. But knowing both really can open doors for you. Now, I think it depends on what type of job that you're trying to apply. If it's more for like a network or studio, then just being good as an edit, just being really solid editor, that's all you really need. Because networks and studios, they're just looking for an editor. They're not looking for those individuals that are good in both. Like I've been working, on some of my clients. One of my clients is a production company that does work for Amazon Prime, for the different sports for Amazon Prime. They have, yes, some of their editors, they do want them to know a little bit of After Effects, which is helpful. But then there are some editors that's all, that's what they do. Now, I personally think that, yes, we're coming to a time where you definitely should have like at least a minimum requirement of knowing After Effects, right? I see, like I said, it did open the doors for me, but I do see that, especially now, that you do have to have at least a basic understanding of After Effects. You don't have to be super great at it, but at least know, like, hey, if you get a template from like, Envato, Elements, or Video Hive, whatever, or a Motion Array, like you can go in and your way around, and you can make the changes. So that is like the minimum requirement. Obviously, the more you know, the more it can open doors for you. Now, I've seen those posts because like last year, I was like just going through and seeing what's out there in the market. It's funny. They want someone that can do the 3D, the After Effects, the visual effects, the Premiere. Like, man, you're looking for a unicorn.
Yeah.
It's like, that's it. Yeah. It's like, I mean, they're looking for a post-production team in one person.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
looking for an agency.
Yeah, exactly. An ad agency, which is ridiculous. For me, it's a little ridiculous. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, they're going to settle for whatever you're really good at. And then hopefully you can get better in the other areas. Right. And obviously they're putting all the skills, but it's really rare that you find someone that can excel in multiple different areas. But as a minimum, to finish your question, as a minimum requirement, yeah, at least having a basic knowledge in After Effects. And I'll finish with one example. One of my good friends from the NFL, and we started, it was like we were on the same team since 2015, my first year for the Thursday Night Football team. He knew After Effects, but at the minimum, right? He could follow some tutorials, maybe do some stuff, and he would probably dabble here and there. But he understood the terminology. He understood the language. He knew the tools. He understood the tools. So he became a second pair of eyes for me. And when I was struggling with like ideas or how can I fix this, like he understood After Effects where he could suggest ideas and speaking the same language. So even if you're an editor and you don't really, don't know how to do, if you have a minimum requirement, but you understand how After Effects works or you understand the terminology, you can communicate better with the graphics, the motion graphics artist or the creative team. So I think that
you can still be involved in that creative process, basically.
Yeah. It just becomes a better communication process instead of like being the opposite where you're ignorant and you don't want to learn and there is no communication. So I think just being familiar will definitely help in the long run, regardless if it opens doors or at least communicating with the team. And your second question, the 3D, right?
Yeah. Do you think like softwares like Blender and Cinema 4D, I think it's called, and like, others like that like, is that now sort of a,
it seems like it is like, so for me, I've used a lot of Element 3D, which is a plugin that comes with After Effects. And it's a great plugin. And I used it a lot during my time at the NFL, but obviously it's a plugin within After Effects. There are limitations. And I remember like, I had to make that decision like back maybe like 10 years ago. Do I go into like learn a 3D software or do I master After Effects? And I remember saying being at that crossroad, what do I do? Because I can only do one at a time. I can't master both at the same time. Yeah, it's a lot. And I remember, let me try to get really good at After Effects. And then once I feel that I've mastered it, then I can go ahead and jump on a 3D software like Cinema 4D or Blender. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm actually learning. I've been in the process the last couple of years, like I mentioned, learning Unreal Engine. And the reason I chose Unreal Engine is because of the capabilities for broadcast to display graphics in real time. A lot of the networks are using it. So I thought that being well versed and knowing how to use Unreal can open more doors of opportunities than, obviously there's always going to be a need for people who know Blender or Cinema 4D or Maya, right? But I think in the world of sports and sports broadcast, Unreal Engine was a better fit for me. So that's why I made that decision. But yeah, I see that push, but I also think there's always going to be the opportunities for people who are just really good in After Effects, who can do that 2D or that blend between 2D and 3D. And if you've been up to date with Adobe, like Adobe After Effects has that new feature where you can import 3D models inside of After Effects. So Adobe is also doing that push where they're trying to make After Effects more 3D capable, where instead of that 2.5D effect, or where it's like 2D layers in 3D space, now you can have true 3D models in 3D space. So they're also doing that push. But my advice is just stick with one, get really good at it, master it, then jump on the next. I mean, you can do both, but it's hard to master both at the same time.
So you must be one of these unicorns that they're looking for, right? In all these postings that know everything, because mastering After Effects is not easy. Like for me, it's like a bottomless pit. There's so many ways to do certain things. So just the fact that you feel like you mastered it, but it must be one of those programs that you're constantly learning. There's always new updates. There's always new things.
Man, I'm constantly learning. Yeah, no, I don't think I'll ever truly, I think I have a really great grasp, understanding of it. I feel comfortable in my way. I'm at the point where I can, if I have an idea, I can start executing that idea in my head with what I'm going to do in After Effects. So once you're at that point where you have an idea and once you get into After Effects, you know exactly how to execute it. What are the different steps that you need to do? Then that's a great indication. Like, okay, you have a great understanding of the software. But yeah.
So do you have a project that stands out for you that you've done so far in your career?
Yeah, there is one. And I think it's actually I'm wearing the Santurce. So Santurce is a baseball team in Puerto Rico. My family's from Nicaragua, but Puerto Rico, we're all Hispanic Latino countries, we're all friends. And one of my favorite ball players of all time is Roberto Clemente, who played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who was from Puerto Rico, and he played for Santurce. And that project for me in my career that I'm really proud of is it was in 2020, which is crazy because it was during COVID. And I get out of the blue, I think I got an email from this producer from ESPN. I'm like, is this real? Like, hey, we're working on, we saw your profile. Are you interested in working on some projects for ESPN? And I'm like, is this true? And then I, Googled it up, like, okay, this person seems legit. It seems like they work at ESPN. So I reach out to them and they're like, yeah, one of my colleagues, has been following you on YouTube and suggested to reach out to you because we have a project here at ESPN Deportes. Are you available? So we talked about it. And unfortunately, that project they went ahead with the project, but the idea for the graphics got canceled or, didn't go through. But then a couple of weeks later, the producer, she emailed me and said, hey, so that project, the graphics, we didn't get approved for graphics for that project, but we got approved for another project, which is on Roberto Clemente. I'm like, are you kidding me? He's like my favorite ball player of all time. This is even better. Yeah, this is even better than your original. Yeah, exactly. So that one, man, I put so much passion, so much love into the project. I was already developing ideas, researching. That's one of the few projects where I did have the time to research, to look for styles that I wanted to implement, to create a distinctive style for it. So it ended up being, I think, a 5-minute feature that ran on ESPN SportsCenter and ESPN Deportes on the case of why you should retire Roberto Clemente's number, his number 21. So, Jackie Robinson is retired and his number 42 is retired among all the teams in Major League Baseball. So it was a documentary. It was a feature basically, telling the story of like Roberto Clemente's greatness on the field and off the field, and also the case for why they should retire his number across all of Major League Baseball. So I did the edit and the graphics along with it. And that's one of the projects that I think will go down as like, man, that one is one of my favorite, one of the ones that I put all my heart and soul into it. And really just proud that and blessed that I had the opportunity to work on.
That's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
We've talked about a lot about learning so far, but we haven't touched on the fact that you have courses that you offer, like for people to learn After Effects. So I'm curious to know, first of all, how did you? Why did you start that? What was the goal? And who are they more like, is it more for beginners? Is it for people who are trying to, or sort of like us? Like when I say us, I mean me and Lance.
Yeah, because Ian and I are looking for a good course to take.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we invite you on the show, actually.
But yeah, are there for people who are trying to get to that next level? So like, who are the courses for, and how did it start?
Yeah, no, as I started doing the YouTube tutorials, and many people would reach out, or comment, they would reach out via the comments on different things in After Effects. And I realized that there was a need for learning the fundamentals. Again, like I go back that learning the fundamentals is so crucial, because we've grown up in an era where we're learning different things, but we're not connecting the dots. We're learning from different tutorials, but we're learning. And like you mentioned, Lance, in After Effects, there's so many different ways to get the same thing done, right? You can do it one way, you can do it another way, and I can do it a third way. So, but really understanding the fundamentals and connecting the dots, that was like my motivation to really get someone that knows basically nothing about After Effects, go through a 3-level structure from beginners to intermediate to advanced, and come out with like, hey, I've mastered this software. And honestly with you, I built it so for whatever reason, like I joke around with my friends, like if my memory gets erased and I need to learn After Effects, I can take my own course and I'll be back up to speed. So that's the way that I built it. Every lesson builds upon each other. But more recently though, this year specifically in 2024, I launched a sports masterclass, because the tutorials that were sports themed, right, on my YouTube channel, a lot of people, once I put out the After Effects course, which is general After Effects, right? But a lot of people were asking, hey, do you have one on sports? And I got a lot of comments from people wanting to learn sports motion graphics specifically in VFX. And, to be honest with you, I didn't have the time. I definitely wanted to do one, but it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time to create a course. And then finally this year, it's like, hey, let's do it. And I brought a buddy of mine who helped me develop the course. And we launched the course this year, the Sports Masterclass. It's like 10 different modules, and it goes from the creative process to design principles. It goes to principles of animation. We go over 3D broadcast graphics. We go over stadium graphics, creating MOGARTs, right? And VFX. So it's very deep. We did it. The first session was live. So for 10 weeks, I went on live every single week. These were like 2-hour tutorials. I mean, I went from it was like a university class. That's like the level that this masterclass. I mean, I was nervous the first couple of times, because it's been a while since I had done a tutorial or I had gone live. Last year I decided to step back from YouTube, just because, like I mentioned, my wife and our daughter's about to turn 2, but being a first time parent, it's just a lot more responsibilities and you have less time. I don't have
sleep. No sleep.
Yeah, no sleep. Yeah. So it's hard to function 100% on caffeine all the time. Eventually, I crash, and I decided, hey, I made that decision. It was a hard decision last year, but I had to really step down from the normal routine of pushing, consistent tutorials out there on YouTube. And I had to, because it's like I mentioned, like I've told people, when you're a first time parent, or your parent, in general, like your priorities shift. You have to find it. For me, it was also for me, it's finding that rhythm, finding that balance of like work and family. Now I'm no longer am I single anymore. Or when I was single, I tell my wife, like when I was single back in LA, I was working like 12, 13, 14 hours a day. I was like, I had fun doing this, and I didn't care if I was working 14 hours. But now it's different, and now it's like, obviously, number one, I don't have that time with a baby. Number two is like, now as I'm a lot older than before, like my body can't sitting down for like 10 straight hours, right? I'm going to be waking up the next day. I'm going to be super, super in bad shape. So I decided to decided to create this masterclass, and it's been great. This first the first group of students, they loved it. They really enjoyed it. It was like I mentioned in university class. It's like all the 16 years of knowledge that I know on how to use After Effects for sports and VFX. It's all in this, and we just launched.
And this one is more sports focused. Is that
this
right?
is 100% sports. 100% sports. It's all we go into all the trending sports graphics that we see now on VFX. I open up a Discord community for the students so they can interact. There is a little community, and yeah, it is 100% sports, just sports. What the people wanted, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. It was definitely a big undertaking, because every week, imagine going live every week for 10 weeks,
Yeah. It's commitment.
That is commitment. And coming up and being prepared, because you're going live for 2 hours. You can't just go ahead and fumble your way through a tutorial.
Yeah.
Like every tutorial that, we prepare, we prepare for the tutorial. We make sure that if we need to take we have to do a second take, we got to do a second take or a third take.
Yeah.
At least in my tutorials, I would do different takes until I felt it was the right balance of what I have to say, and also the process, the steps, right? Because sometimes I always want to make sure that all my steps are clear and logical. I'm not skipping steps. I've seen a lot of tutorials, people skip steps and it doesn't make sense. I'm like, hey, that
and there's
doesn't
nothing
help
more
out.
annoying than like getting the same comment on a tutorial. So like, hey, I don't understand that step. Like it doesn't do that on my computer. And then you have to explain it to every single one of them. It's like, never again.
Exactly. No, exactly. So it was a lot of, rehearsing the day of the live class. I would pretty much rehearse, several times during the day to make sure that when I did the live class, it was as best as I can possibly do. But that first class was amazing experience. The students really loved it, enjoyed it. We're about to start the summer session right now. And next week, actually, we're going to start the summer session with a new group of students. Although it won't be 100% live, most of it will be the live recordings that we did from the first, but there will be several live, the first class will be live, and then I'll do several like live Q&As where they have any questions, I'll offer that time to just answer their questions. But,
is registration still open? Do E and I still have time to register for this?
So registration actually ended this Tuesday, but since you are friends and we're doing this podcast, I will give you a peek. Yeah, we'll work something out for sure. We'll work something out so you guys can take a little peek in and see if you like it for the third session. So it's something that we're going to do very similar to a structure like a university. The reason is because the other course, it's available 24/7, but this one I do offer mentorship, and I've seen that being available for questions and for help is half the battle. Sometimes even though I do my best and try to explain things, sometimes, just spending an extra amount of time with a student goes a long way. So if I have it available 24/7, I can't offer that service, that mentorship to the students. So that's why we're doing it, a couple times a year. Like this is the first year that we just launched. So we're still developing the course. We're still developing the best way for the student to enjoy the learning process as well. And as well as for me to give them that mentorship, because I know that mentorship is something that I really didn't have as much in my journey. I do have some mentors, but not in motion graphics, right? Or VFX, which I wish I really had. It would have been huge. So I think being available to just give them that mentorship, help them with questions, help them answer their questions, I think it really goes a long way.
Well, it must be very rewarding to see the person learn when you're right there with them. Where when you're doing the 24-hour one that's online, you don't see the progress. So what's that like when you see the person actually improving right before your eyes?
Man, it's an awesome feeling, and it's really great. And then for them to like, aha, I got it, I understand it, and it's just that I really love it because it's a smaller group, and it's more like I said, that class setting, right? And you get to know the students. If it's 24/7, you really don't know who's in there, right? But if it's more of this class university setting, when I mean setting, right, it's in that structure, you get to know more the people who are enrolled more. You get to know the students more, and you get to care, and you're rooting for them. Like I take it personally to be their mentor, to make sure that they're learning, so it's for me at the end, like I mentioned, like I said at the very last class, like, hey, you've all gone through this class. We've gone through 10 weeks. We grinded out. It was amazing. It was tough, but we learned a lot. But now I considered you friends and colleagues. You're no longer students. You're now friends. So I've basically made new friends in this sports motion graphics community. And just getting to see, like you mentioned, Lance, their progress and learning and them posting their work is just very fulfilling, very rewarding. And it's a lot less stressful than the client work when client comes back with you with 10 million changes. Like, yes, I'll take that anytime over like all those client changes.
Well, it's nice to give back, right? Like, I mean, you have this gift and you're so talented. It's nice to share that talent with other people. Like, it's really neat that you're doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, most definitely. It's been really rewarding.
Speaking of the people, I do have a question coming from the public. Basically, I can't remember his name though, and I don't want to go through my phone because it's going to take me forever.
It was me who asked the question.
No, the question was regarding Fusion. Is that what it's called? Fusion, the Da Vinci version of After Effects, basically.
Yes.
So is that something worth learning? Is it? Well, I'm assuming it's not on par with After Effects, but like, is it something you can get away with basically without needing to learn After Effects?
That's a great question. I don't think I can answer that question because I haven't dived into Fusion. I've been wanting to at least dive into Fusion and kind of compare it to After Effects. I've heard good things about it, but like I mentioned, I can't really answer that because I haven't dived into Fusion, but that's definitely on my list.
Because I feel like sometimes these things, even if they're good, like it depends what you want to do. If you're just working from home and if that is doing the job, then go nuts. But if your plan is to work, in an agency or a broadcast or a sports team, well, they're using, Premiere, After Effects and this. And if you show up and say, well, I only use Resolve, then it's like, well, you have to be part of you have to be able to share projects. You have to be able to jump into all these other things. So that's where I guess like the issue is with other software that might be just as good as Premiere, but they're just not industry wide. They're not everywhere when you get to the pro level, and that's where it can be it can be holding you back basically.
No, for sure. And I think you also have to put into consideration the effect. You have to put into consideration that there are so many third-party plugins for After Effects, which gives it a level up. After Effects has a lot of built-in effects, but there are also a lot of third-party plugins which allows you to do so many great things in After Effects. So you made you mentioned definitely that it's an industry. Adobe After Effects is industry standard when it comes to motion graphics, and I think along with the plugins, the third-party plugins, it just makes it pretty much like the go-to. Like you mentioned, if you're doing this as an independent motion graphic artist or independent artist, for yourself or for, clients, but you're independent, yes, you can get away with it. But if you're going to be working for example, like I just did some graphics for this production company based out of Los Angeles that they're working for this show for the Olympics for Team USA. Right. I think it's something on Roku, one of those streaming platforms. Right. They sent me the After Effects project file. Right. So I had to go in. They're like, look, this is the toolkit, but we want you to create based on their toolkit. We want you to create additional graphics. And so I'm like, OK, send me the After Effects project. Obviously, like, I don't know how many people would do it in Fusion. That's the thing. Yeah. So if you want to be working at a higher level, like in the industry, definitely After Effects is the way to go. If you're more independent, like you mentioned, if someone is more independent, yeah, you probably could get away.
I have Resolve and I have Fusion. It's a one-stop shop. Like that's the idea of it, right? You open up that one project. You're editing your video, you move right over to graphics, where
Mm.
in After Effects, it's a different program. You don't have to open up Premiere at all. But this, you have to open up DaVinci Resolve to go into Fusion. At least that's how I use it. I have a question for you, actually, because when I first started editing, templates were a bad word. Okay. Like, you used a video template and you were like almost shy to tell your coworkers you use this video template, but I'm not good in After Effects. So this is how I get my graphics and my nice text, right? Now, do you ever like, nowadays it's an industry standard. Everybody has like an Avato Elements account or Motion Array. Do you use those sometimes because you're stuck? Because obviously you can create anything you want from scratch, but do you sometimes go to templates when you're limited in time?
I do sometimes. I most of the times no, because a lot of the times it's custom made. But there are some times that I will go through. I do have a subscription to Envato, so I will go through. For example, if I need whatever, I need some motion. I need a template. I'll download it. But I find myself, the few times that I do, I find myself modifying it so much that it becomes my own.
Okay.
I never use a template as is. I never go in and like, let me swap the photos, let me change the text or the colors, and that's it. I really reverse engineer it and pretty much at the end make it my own. So what that means is I'll take their assets. Like, look, I don't like how they, I need to change the speed of the animation. I need to change this. I need to change that. So at the end of the day, I feel like I spend so much time. I'm like, man, I'm like redoing this template. It's like I can go ahead and flip it and sell it and call it my own because I modify it so much. But I know there are companies that some production companies that they rely heavily on templates. But I'll from occasion from now and then I will I will download some, but I'll modify it so much. But most of my work is basically they come to me. They're looking for something more custom made. But it's funny because some of them, they will send me like the Video Hive or Envato Elements. They will send me links like, hey, this is what we're looking for, like the idea, of like.
I was going to say, sounds like you use templates more for inspiration.
Yes. Yeah. And the clients will do that. Clients will do that for inspiration. They'll send me that. They'll send me like links as inspiration. And that's where like if I have the access, I'll download them just so I can kind of see what they did, Some of them are like so fast, like, wait a minute. I have to go frame by frame to see like what they're actually doing, or let me dive into the, After Effects project. But
my challenge is none of those templates are built the same. So you work in one and you're like, okay, yeah, this guy put this here and this, and you go open another one. You're like, where is this? And you're looking, like, I'm spending a half hour just looking at where these elements are. And that's what I find frustrating, because I get it. Like, people submit their templates, they get accepted to the site, you can download them. So none of them it's all different people doing them. But I wish that there was like a norm where like, okay, this is how it's laid out. They're all laid out the same, because that's my biggest challenge, not being so efficient. After Effects is when I open up one of these templates and I'm really diving into it, it takes me about a good 20 minutes just to figure out where everything is.
Yeah.
You don't have that issue, right? You open up, you're like, oh, that's there. This guy did this, right?
Yeah, I that's what I do. I reverse engineer, and by those 20 minutes, I have an understanding of like how they constructed it and what I need to do to fix it. But I hear that same storylines from my friends who are mostly editors, right? That some of the production companies that they work for, they're pushing them to also add graphics via templates. And one of my friends is like, yeah, I spend like half a day or almost a day like just trying to figure out this template just to add these graphics, which at the end of the day, templates are there to speed up the process and to help you. But if you're spending, if you're spending a lot of time, a lot of hours, then it's doing the opposite. But yeah, you're right. I wish there was some type of like standard, because if there was some type of standard, I think it would be easier across the board.
There's your next idea. To start selling templates with a standard template. They're all the same.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, make it like sports too.
CM approved templates. Buy those ones that they're built. But to be fair, for me, that's kind of how I learned After Effects, doing kind of what you're saying, which is like getting those templates and trying to change something that might not be meant to be changed. So trying to understand how they did it so that I can change it, maybe make it like transparent, like trying to get rid of the background, for example. And then you're going to all these different sequences to find where the background is. And by the time you find it, you kind of understand the structure a little better. And if I'm trying to turn something off, or like I want to get rid of one asset or something like that, like just doing these little things that introduced me to the structure and how After Effects works, and still wasn't able to create a project from scratch, but I was a lot more, I was getting better at customizing those templates and making them my own, and then just went from there basically.
Yeah, and that's a great way to learn I'm sorry, that's a great way to learn After Effects. Reverse engineering, and little by little you see what goes where.
My favorite thing is when I discovered Dynamic Link, when you can go back into Premiere. I was like, oh my God, this is so easy.
Which, by the way, I don't really use Dynamic Link that much from After Effects. Only maybe if it's a very simple graphic, maybe like the lower third type. But because a lot of the effects I'm using third-party plugins, and if it's like heavy like 3D stuff, like no, I'd rather just render it out as a QuickTime ProRes 422 and it just put it in the edit.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, when your After Effects project is big, that dynamic link in Premiere can get very, very laggy, very slow.
Well, guys, my After projects are very light, so you don't have to worry. I can use that dynamic link all day long. I'm good.
Yeah, I usually do this to add like a saber effect or something like.
Yeah.
But if you're going to rewatch the video over and over, exporting like just a ProRes thing instead and putting it on top, keeping the dynamic link underneath in case I need to change anything. But usually I'll have like a rendered out ProRes file so I can just play my timeline without pulling my hair out.
Yeah, I started the dynamic link when it came out during my time at the NFL. I was like trying to keep it with After Effects, and I would use it on some of the videos, but after a while, I just realized that it was more efficient if I just rendered out a QuickTime ProRes 422 HQ file, and then I would just like plop it into my edit, because it would just slow things down with the dynamic link, or if it crashed, I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna deal with it. Let me just render out that QuickTime.
See, it's like I'm already taking this course. I'm already getting tips. Okay, no more dynamic link. Stop being lazy and export out the clip. Okay.
Oh, man. Yeah, this is something super simple, like a saber or like a simple text animation.
Yeah, no, that's true. I used to do that when we were doing like headshots, like dynamic links. I would use for like just changing the name and positions and stuff. Like that was sort of an easy way to do it.
Which now is Mogarts. You can create a Mogart.
Yeah,
out of that,
exactly.
Which is the biggest thing now. I'm trying to create Mogarts, so you can use it for sports.
All right, Siam. So before we wrap this up, what advice would you give somebody who's trying to get into the sports videography / motion design industry? Just
be patient. It's a grind. Learn the fundamentals, and that's my advice. Just be patient, persevere, stay positive, because you're gonna have ups and downs, and learn the fundamentals and have a passion for it. Like if you're really passionate for it, it'll push you through those difficult, challenging moments. And always stay connected. Make friends in the community, stay connected, because that's how I've gone from one point in my career to another point. Like everything has, like I said, that rung in the ladder goes up and up, and that's been because of the connections, the people that I meet on each project. So be authentic to who you are. Make friends, and you never know who's going to call you like in 5 years or 3 years or like 3 months from there. Hey, are you available to work on this? On, like, for example, for me, on that ESPN 30 for 30 documentary. So stay connected, make friends, be positive, patient, and just, passionate, and just grind it.
No, I agree, because I think like everyone who called me later on, people that I've worked with in the past or worked for in the past and called me back on another project, I think it was 50% because of what I was able to do work-wise, but also 50% because we got along and, we worked well together and all that, that other side. So yeah, it is, I agree that it is very important, and in a way it is why you're here, because we connected years ago and we stayed in touch and here we are.
Definitely. Yeah. Just being that team player, like in sports, having that good chemistry. The best teams that win the championships are the one that have that chemistry. So just, being an amazing person and trying to always just being an amazing person and being authentic and connecting with other people and having that chemistry goes a long way. Like you mentioned, a lot of the times it's like people just want to work with people they can get along with, right?
Yeah.
And if they can't get along with you, or even if you could be the most talented person, but if you're hard to get along with or to deal with, chances are down the road they're not gonna bring you back.
Yeah.
So people want to work with you just because you're a nice guy, even if you don't know all the NFL trivia questions. That's what CM's trying to tell us, everybody. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend with us. And guys, check out CM's YouTube channel, check out his online resources. He could definitely help you.
We'll put the links in the description as well. Yeah.
For people who are starting After Effects and they register for your online course, how long does it take to get them up to speed? Like, how long is that entry level course?
So the beginner's course is about 2 hours long of content. The intermediate is about 2 hours and a half. Then the advanced section spikes up to about 14 hours. I just put out like a crash course essentials. That's a free like mini course. That's about 40 minutes. That kind of teaches you a lot of like the basic tools and techniques in After Effects. So anyone who's watching this, who's interested, or listening, who's interested, I do have this free crash course, which is a 40-minute, divided into like 9 or 10 different videos, 40 minutes total. That just, shows you an overview, and you get to create a very simple like social media graphic.
Yeah, we'll share in a link then for sure, because it's definitely going to help people out there, and it's going to help E and I out also. So this is great. Well, thank you so much for being on our show. I guess that's it for today. There's any other questions you have?
No, but I was going to say I'll be in South Beach in November for 4 days. I'll be with friends and I'll be drunk most of the time, so I don't know if but yeah, if we can figure something else, we'll have to. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Well, let's do it the day that you arrive before you get drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about timing, CM. It's all about timing.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's don't do it at the end of the trip. Let's do it at the beginning of the trip.
Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, we'll try to figure something out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Thanks a lot again, CM.
Thank you, guys.